Good afternoon, everybody. Russ from the West Ham Network hopes all well. It's Friday. It's Friday, and West Ham first team can't ruin our weekend because we play on Monday. But if you want your fix, if you claim to love the academy so much, get your ass down to Rush Green. Should be thousands of us there tonight as West Ham take on Brighton Hove Albion under 21, 7 p.m. kickoff, £5 for adults, £1 per kid. All the money goes to the academy. And if you're a season ticket holder, it's free. It is free. So, you'll be if you're in the Romford area, where you're Hornchurch, Gideon Park, Ilford area, you'll be home by like 9:15. And it's really good. You're close to the pitch. You're close to the pitch, and you'll see some of the stars of the future. And you can probably, and then hopefully you'll get some understanding of why I'm so positive about the academy. Because there's a great bunch of lads down there, and there's a great bunch of coaches, and in a world where we claim that we don't feel like it's West Ham anymore, the academy really is. And you need to get your ass down there and cheer on the boys. We get a few hundred each game. We should get 1,000 easy. With all the season ticket holders, with all of us claiming to be, we love West Ham. And this is West Ham. And if you're disillusioned with the first team, get your ass down to the academy and get behind them because they need it. They're on the back of 3. Well, if they win today, it could be 3 wins in a row. And we know because obviously the academy show is getting more and more views every week. It's gradually increasing. So we know that there's a thirst there. Let's see it live. That'd be amazing to get a really good crowd tonight. So if you can, get your ass down there. But I want to talk about the board. I want to talk about the power struggle at the board because it seems to have it was quite amicable, I think, to start with, and then with particularly the appointment of Tim Stein, we're led to believe that was heavily instigated by Daniel Kretinsky. He wanted someone to look after the sporting, which in itself is a kind of, vote of non-confidence in terms of how the club was run from a football perspective before then, if he wants someone else to come in. And I think that's sort of that's the main crux of the process at the moment is, without that sort of director of football, without that sort of footballing in terms of the immediate future, in having that football operations person or persons, we seem a little bit, it seems very much like back to type and an old school, and where the chairman does all the business and stuff like that. That's not how football's run nowadays, and so that's what we were. And so it sort of went quiet again after Steidham was appointed, but definitely as a result of the petition, of the protests, of the media coverage that's getting, likes of Dan and Gary speaking, I think, very eloquently in terms of, their positions and stuff like that. That, as we know, I think we spoke about it yesterday. We had all the board were in the UK, and it seems that a lot of it is instigated by Daniel Kretinsky, and he seems to be. Well, we know he's had a vested interest in who West Ham are going to be their next manager. There's no denying there will be a point, I think, in the next couple of games where the managerial position will be available. That's obvious when you've got the worst, points tally or whatever, points per game tally of any West Ham manager in the Premier League. I think it's ever now. We're not seeing development. We're not seeing players. We're not seeing progression. And there will be a point where the panic button is pressed. And, and I think that's always pressed when it looks like a potential relegation threat could be posed. And I think after you've got, when we come to the October international break, if we're in a position, which we probably likely are, where we're languishing in the bottom of the league, then I think the button's pressed. There's no denying it, and it's not working. And we know that there's been sort of a power struggle internally in terms of who's the next person in charge. Now, realistically, the only people who have, as a shareholding perspective, obviously you've got Sullivan, who's the largest shareholder. You've got Kretinsky, who's the second, and then the Golds. And the Gold family, as we know, is the shares are up for sale and everything that's going on with that. Now, in terms of Daniel Kretinsky, he has, according to 𝗕𝗢𝗥𝗗𝗥𝗓𝗄, and again, it's quite interesting that this has come out via 𝗕𝗢𝗥𝗄𝗥, because we know there is a, it tends to be a, one of their sources tends to be a senior source, that Daniel Kretinsky is unlikely to put any more money into West Ham under the current model. That's what has been said. He has no desire to inject more cash under the current construct of the football club, it says. And so because of that, because of his desire maybe for Marco Silva, and, if you want Marco Silva, it's going to cost you £9 million. There seems to be, in essence, a stalemate in the situation. I think Sullivan and the Golds lack any, not inclination, but the capital to take West Ham and bring in Marco Silva. That's who seems that everyone wants, really, but money is the object. And I think, as the song goes, I think money is too tight to mention from a club perspective. And that's not saying that cash injection could be put in by Sullivan, cash injection could be put in by Kretinsky, and potentially by the Gold family as well. Now, the likelihood is the Gold family won't want to put any money in. And based on how it works from a shareholders perspective, if Kretinsky then puts money into the club, then there's a dilution of the shares amongst the others. That's how it usually works. I'm led to believe. If I'm wrong, please let me know in the comments below. But that was one of the issues with the Barclays loan, was that if it had to be paid in terms of 37% by Sullivan, 23%, but that's how it has to be paid in. Otherwise, if it was done any more, then there's a dilution of the shares. Now, from a technical perspective, obviously Danny Kretinsky owns a controlling share of Sparta Prague, so I think any more, if I'm led to believe, any more percentages would then put that at risk as well. So I think he's sort of in a bit between a rock and a hard place. But that's not saying he wouldn't put money in. I think the situation changed, and if David Sullivan put money in, then Daniel Kretinsky to match them. So basically, he's the basic crux of it is he's not going to put any money in unless everyone else puts more money in. And that's where we're at the moment. And the likelihood is that the others don't want to put any more money in. So we're sort of at this stalemate, which doesn't help anyone. Doesn't help the club, doesn't help us as fans, doesn't help the trajectory of the club. And that's a stalemate. We're at the situation. This then coincides with news last night that Spurs, just to compound it anymore, they've got, what's the guy's name? He's an NFL guy. He's a consortium. Eric, is it Brooklyn Eric? He's heading, according to the Sun, a 12-man group that's lodged an offer to buy basically ENIC and the Lewis family outright. Apparently, according to the report, they're offering 3.3 billion. That's mental. Which they and the owners are then ready to set aside a further 1.2 billion for the player budget, inclusive of wages, fees, and agents' payments. The total package will be a world record takeover for football club, exceeding the 4.25 billion by Todd Boehly when he bought Chelsea, or Todd Boehly Group when he bought Chelsea in 2022. That's mental, isn't it? So when Spurs are ranked, and then the trouble is, if they then, that's the issue though, it's a knock-on effect. So Spurs goes to 3.3 billion. Our valuation of 1 billion. People go, oh, it's cheap now. And then the board will want double. It's the worst thing that can happen, because any prospective buyers now, or investors, will look at that and go, shit, how much is it going to cost to get the gold shares now? Which we know that they're valued at around 25% of 250 million pounds, which equates to obviously £1 billion rate. And actually, as we said yesterday, back in 2016, apparently David Sullivan turned down or the board turned down a £625 million buyout from Red Bull. So in the last 10 years, that's gone from 650 million, I think it's 650 it came to £1 billion. We just everything seems to be just crescendoing to the top. The managerial appointment, there's a power struggle there in terms of who's the next person. I think it's a unanimous decision that they really want Marco Silva, but they won't pay £9 million. Or actually, Daniel Kretinsky would have to pay 27% of that. And David Sullivan would have to pay 39% of that. And until we've got that gold shares have been resolved, we haven't got a third name. So literally is, I mean, at the moment, it usually happened was it was a 3 when obviously DG was still alive. He would tend to side with Sullivan, obviously been business partners for years, but years and years and years. Whereas Kretinsky was the outside vote, really. With the gold shares coming up for sale, if they were bought by, maybe, and again, this is all speculation, but people like someone said to me the other day, "Oh, there's no point there isn't no point for 15%. There's no point buying them unless you're an existing shareholder, unless you're someone like Trip Smith, who potentially could shoulder barge his way into the conversation." Now, as we know, he's been out in the States trying to get consortiums and stuff like that together, and the Canadians as well. Obviously, the World Cup next year. There's lots of interest in football. I think it's 14 out of the Premier League clubs are currently owned by or partly owned by US companies. Trips with as 8%, and 8% plus 15% obviously isn't enough to oust anyone, but it's enough to get your voice heard, your vote, because you'd have over 20%. And then who knows? Then who knows what happens? You know what I mean? It's like, as I said, it's. I think there's going to be. There seems to be a different energy with the conversations that are happening now to maybe the conversations that happened 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, in terms of takeovers, ownerships, football operations, people. There seems to be a change in the wind slightly, and I think maybe that has been the difference, is having that Daniel Kretinsky character involved in that discussion, where previously I'm thinking the Burnley game, it was a not a closed shop, but it was GSB, wasn't it? Whereas now it seems with Kretinsky sort of wedged in there, it does add another wrinkle to this. And we'll see how this plays out. As I said, I think maybe it does seem I think the Spurs takeover, if that happened, I mean that would blow everything out of the water, really. But let me know what your thoughts are objectively, because I think it's really easy if I say, "Oh, Dad, you should just put money in." But the reason why he's rich is because he don't spend money, and he spends money wisely. And I think whether that would investing any more money in West Ham, is that a wise investment? Probably not at the moment. We're a bit of a sinking ship. But that's just me objectively. That's not me. It's not. And again, let's make a point. It's not me. I'm not employed by the club to say anything. It's literally because someone made a comment today in one of the videos, and I was like, no, this is me talking objectively from a different perspective. And as I said, someone said, "Oh, you're pro Potter." I'm not. He's failing at the moment. It's clear. You look at the we're literally almost at the bottom of the table. You know what I mean? And it's like we haven't won. We've won one game. We've literally got 3 points on the board. We've conceded so many goals. It's not working. But unfortunately, it seems that it's almost like it's bottlenecking at the top now in terms of what's going to happen. I think that bottlenecking has prolonged Potter's time at West Ham. I think if there was a clear objective in terms of what was going to happen, he wouldn't be in charge now. And that's, again, just my opinion. And also, the person that called me, there was one guy yesterday who thought, he said to me, he went, He said, "Oh, I'm surprised you're still alive." How rude's that? How nasty! I'm only just here in front of I know I'm a fat bloke, but fat bloke in a web camera, just trying to have a discussion. Jesus Christ, some people, Anyway, as I said, keep an eye on the channel. Hopefully, I'll still be alive by the time we get to Hammer's headlines. God willing, and take care. Stay safe. Give it a hype if you've got any hypes left for the week. If not, we'll see you later on. Much love. Bye bye.